On the evening of the 20th of August, 1911, the Louvre Museum in Paris was about to close. At that moment, a short man with a small mustache entered the museum. As closing time arrived, all visitors left the museum. But this man took advantage of a distracted staff member and slipped into a hidden corner where he hid for the entire night. At dawn, he quickly moved toward the section of the museum where many famous artworks were displayed. Seeing no one around, he immediately took a painting down from the wall, wrapped it in a white cloth, then slipped out of the museum and disappeared into the crowds of the city. This man had effortlessly pulled off one of the biggest art thefts of the century. The painting he stole was none other than the Mona Lisa, which had a history of nearly 400 years. For more than 100 years, the Mona Lisa has always been the main attraction at the Louvre. Although the Mona Lisa was priceless and unique, it wasn't until after this theft that the painting gained worldwide fame. Even people who had no interest in art came to know her name. So, who was the man with the small mustache who managed to steal the most famous masterpiece in the world and escape from what was believed to be the most secure museum in France? And more importantly, what makes this painting so special that it captivated the Emperor of France, Napoleon, who hung it in his bedroom to admire, and even drove an artist to jump to his death out of obsession with her mysterious smile? To understand the story of the Mona Lisa, we must go back about 500 years to the 16th century, when the painting was created. The Mona Lisa's creator was Leonardo da Vinci, an Italian. Da Vinci was a true genius, immensely talented. He was a writer, painter, inventor, architect, sculptor, engineer, mathematician, astronomer, and anatomist. He was endlessly curious and strived for absolute perfection in everything he did. Da Vinci loved experimenting with new things. He saw both art and science from a unique perspective, and his working style was unconventional. After completing famous works like The Last Supper and St. John the Baptist, in 1503, Da Vinci began creating a new painting. This commission was given to him by an Italian silk merchant named Francesco del Giocondo. He wanted Da Vinci to paint a portrait of his wife, Lisa del Giocondo. In October 1503, Da Vinci began painting the portrait of Lisa del Giocondo and named it Mona Lisa, in which Mona in Italian means madam or lady. As with all his works, Da Vinci poured his heart and soul into painting the Mona Lisa. He spent 4 full years meticulously perfecting every detail, yet still felt it was not perfect enough, so in the end, he never truly finished the painting. Later, in 1516, the French king invited Da Vinci to France, and he brought the unfinished painting with him. In France, he continued to work on it, but in 1517, his right hand became paralyzed. 2 years later, in 1519, Da Vinci passed away, and the Mona Lisa remained an incomplete artwork. What's astonishing is that the most famous painting in the world is actually an unfinished piece. Yet Da Vinci's artistic talent was so extraordinary that even an incomplete work radiated a unique and complete beauty. That unfinished painting captivated the French king. After Da Vinci's death, the king added the painting to the royal collection. For nearly 250 years after, the Mona Lisa adorned the royal palaces of France. After the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power and was immediately enchanted by the painting. In 1800, Napoleon hung the Mona Lisa in his bedroom. After 4 years in Napoleon's room, in 1804, the Mona Lisa was moved to the Louvre's Grand Gallery. The Louvre is not only the largest museum in France, but also one of the largest in the world, a dream destination for visitors from all over. Anyone who entered the Louvre could see the Mona Lisa. But strangely, for many decades, very few people came to see her. Only artists or passionate art lovers knew about her. Many art critics disliked the painting, but others could stare at her for hours, endlessly praising Da Vinci, not caring at all that the painting was unfinished. When painting the Mona Lisa, Da Vinci used more than 30 layers of paint, some so thin they were finer than a human hair. She may appear large, but in reality, the painting is only 30 inches wide, 21 inches tall, and weighs 8 kilograms. It's an oil painting on poplar wood, not canvas or paper. The most special thing about the Mona Lisa is her mysterious smile. Countless people have been captivated by it. At first glance, she seems to be gently smiling, but if you stare longer, the smile appears to slowly fade. The French painter Louis Perrault became so obsessed with Mona Lisa's mysterious smile that he went to extremes. On the 23rd of June, 1852, he jumped off the roof of a hotel in Paris to end his life. In his final note, he wrote that it was Mona Lisa's smile that made him end it all. And just like that, the Mona Lisa quietly remained at the Louvre for over 100 years. During all that time, most people didn't truly understand her. She was just another painting in the eyes of the public. But in 1911, everything changed, and the person who changed it all was Vincenzo Peruggia. Peruggia was Italian, and he was always troubled by one thing. The Mona Lisa was a portrait of an Italian woman, painted by an Italian artisto. Why did France have the right to keep her? That's why he decided to bring the Mona Lisa back to Italy. In 1908, Peruggia brought this plan with him from Italy to Paris and got a job at the Louvre. His work included cleaning paintings, reframing artworks, and sometimes even crafting protective glass cases for them. One time, while working on the glass frame of the Mona Lisa, Peruggia was involved in the process, which allowed him to learn how to open the complex frame quickly. After becoming familiar with every corner, hallway, and security detail of the Louvre, Vincenzo Peruggia quit his job at the museum. Using the experience he had gained, he began planning the theft of the Mona Lisa. After a long period of meticulous preparation, on the afternoon of Sunday, the 20th of August, 1911, he walked into the Louvre. Inside the museum, he went straight to the Salon Carré, where many famous paintings were displayed, but his eyes fixed only on the Mona Lisa. He smiled as he walked toward the Mona Lisa, but just a second later, he stepped back. It wasn't the right time, yet there were still people around, including security staff, and he risked being caught. His plan was to hide inside the museum overnight, and the next morning, Monday, he would steal the Mona Lisa. Since Monday was the museum's maintenance day, the number of security guards would be reduced. For Peruggia, this was the perfect opportunity. Moreover, having worked at the Louvre, he knew the place inside and out, so he chose a storage room as his hiding place zone that was rarely visited. At daybreak, he dressed in a white uniform identical to those worn by museum employees. Then, quickly and carefully, he walked to the Salon Carré, took the Mona Lisa off the wall, removed her from the glass frame, and wrapped her in a white cloth. He then carried the Mona Lisa downstairs toward the exit, but when he tried to open the door, he discovered it was locked. He tried several times, but the door wouldn't budge. At that moment, sweat poured from his forehead, and he was filled with worry and fear of being discovered. Just then, a museum plumber happened to pass by. Peruggia was so frightened he nearly lost control. Fortunately, the plumber saw his white uniform and assumed he was a museum worker, so he helped him open the door. Vincenzo Peruggia thanked him and then left the Louvre smoothly with the Mona Lisa in hand. 24 hours passed before anyone noticed she had been stolen. Since the museum often removed paintings for cleaning or photography, no one noticed that the Mona Lisa spot was empty. On Tuesday afternoon, the famous painter Louis Perrault came to the Louvre to make a sketch of the Mona Lisa, but he found only 4 nails where the painting had been, covered in a layer of dust. Museum staff then began searching everywhere for the Mona Lisa, but even after combing through every corner, they couldn't find any trace of her. When the news reached the museum's management, everything descended into chaos. Word spread rapidly through Paris, then all over France, and eventually the entire world learned of the theft. At that time, although the Mona Lisa wasn't yet widely known to the public, she was highly valued by the art world and painters. As the news of the theft spread, hundreds of people gathered at the Louvre to mourn. Many even brought flowers to place where she once hung. All of Paris was plunged into grief, as if it had lost a beloved relative. The next day, the New York Times ran the story on its front page. The Mona Lisa became the topic of conversation around the globe. Even people who had never cared about art began to pay attention to her. People were outraged at the museum director, accusing him of negligence, and eventually he was dismissed. But in everyone's heart, only one question remained. Leonardo's Mona Lisa, that silent painting with the mysterious smile, where had she disappeared to, and whose hands was she now in? To find the answer, the police deployed 60 of the best detectives in France to investigate. They found the Mona Lisa's glass frame inside the museum, and fingerprint expert Alphonse Bertillon was brought in to assist with the investigation. He found the thief's fingerprints on the glass, but after extensive comparisons, the prints didn't match anyone in the police database. Police began questioning guards and employees and learned that the theft occurred sometime between 7 o'clock and 8:30 a.m. on Monday. Beyond that, they had no further clues about the thief. Afterward, police posted wanted posters featuring the Mona Lisa's mysterious smile throughout Paris, set up checkpoints at intersections, and searched vehicles and passers-by. Major newspapers offered generous rewards to anyone who could find clues to the Mona Lisa's whereabouts. During the investigation, the police arrested and interrogated hundreds of suspects, including the famous poet and playwright Guillaume Apollinaire. Apollinaire had once said he wanted to burn down the Louvre, and his secretary had previously stolen 2 ancient statues from the museum, so the police suspected him of being involved in the theft of the Mona Lisa. But during the interrogation, Apollinaire firmly insisted on his innocence and claimed that someone else was behind the theft, someone whose exposure would shock the entire world. The name Apollinaire revealed was none other than Pablo Picasso, not only his close friend but also a world-renowned painter. In addition to Apollinaire, another person also mentioned Picasso's name. This individual wrote a letter to the police, stating that he had once stolen several statues from the Louvre and sold them to Picasso, who later used them in his artwork. At first, the police found the statement strange, but after checking the serial numbers of the stolen statues, the Louvre administration confirmed they were indeed part of the museum's collection. As a result, Picasso was also arrested and interrogated. After a period of investigation, due to lack of evidence, both Guillaume Apollinaire and Pablo Picasso were released. Meanwhile, police suspicion shifted to another famous figure, Morgan. Morgan was an American banker and a passionate art collector, particularly fond of rare works of art. At the time, forging paintings and selling them to wealthy Americans was a booming business, so rumors spread that Morgan had ordered the theft of the Mona Lisa and that the thief was trying to deliver the painting to him. Based on this suspicion, American police stopped a ship en route from France to the US and searched it thoroughly, but found no painting. During this time, countless theories and rumors continued to emerge. Some French citizens accused the Germans of stealing the Mona Lisa, while some Germans claimed the French government had staged the entire event to divert public attention from more serious issues. And so new leads kept surfacing, but the truth remained shrouded in mystery. The public grew anxious, and investigators were exhausted. Weeks passed, then months, and eventually 2 full years. Yet the Mona Lisa, with her mysterious smile, had completely vanished. No one knew where she was. Just as France and the US were pouring all their efforts into searching for the Mona Lisa, in 1913, artist and art collector Hugh Blaker discovered a painting in a house in Somerset. The figure in the painting was none other than Lisa del Giocondote, woman portrayed in the Mona Lisa. What shocked people was that this painting wasn't a replica of the Mona Lisa, but an earlier version. It's said that Leonardo da Vinci painted 2 nearly identical portraits, and this one was an experimental draft before he began the Mona Lisa currently displayed in the Louvre. However, some argue that while Lisa's face and hands were painted by da Vinci himself, the background was done by one of his assistants. Though it was also a portrait of Lisa, it differed in several ways from the Mona Lisa. This version was 3.5 inches taller and 5 inches wider than the Mona Lisa, painted not on wood but on canvas. Since it was painted earlier, Lisa appears more youthful. The background features 2 columns, which are absent from the Mona Lisa. Due to the Mona Lisa's fame, Hugh Blaker bought the painting and took it to his studio in Eastbourne. This painting later became known as the Eastbourne Mona Lisa. Unbelievably, while the stolen Mona Lisa had become the focus of global media attention, and French police had been searching day and night for 2 years without success. Another version of the Mona Lisa had unexpectedly surfaced. Meanwhile, the real stolen Mona Lisa had been hidden in a small apartment less than 2 miles from the Louvre residence of the thief, Vincenzo Peruggia. After stealing the painting, Peruggia returned to his apartment and concealed the Mona Lisa in a special wooden box with a hidden compartment at the bottom. Strangely, Peruggia had a prior criminal record, and the police had his fingerprints on file, but only prints from his right hand. The fingerprint found on the Mona Lisa's glass frame was from the left hand, so the police never realized he was a suspect. Although during the investigation, police searched Peruggia's home twice, he cleverly managed to deceive them. No one suspected that the Mona Lisa was hidden right under their noses. Peruggia's theft was simple and direct, and his evasion of the police surprisingly effortless. It seemed he might never be caught. But then, he made a serious mistake. 2 years after the heist, Peruggia grew increasingly anxious. Originally, he had intended to return the Mona Lisa to Italy, but after the theft, the painting had received unprecedented attention. Every corner of France was looking for it. Afraid of being arrested, he had no choice but to hide the painting in his apartment for 2 years. But over time, he became more and more uneasy, desperate to get rid of the painting. So in December 1913, he wrote a letter to an Italian art dealer named Alfredo Geri. In the letter he wrote, "The stolen painting by Leonardo da Vinci is in my possession. This artwork should not be in the Louvre Museum of France, but should belong to the Uffizi Gallery in Italy, because its creator was an Italian." At the end of the letter, he signed his name as Leonardo Alfredo. After reading the letter, Geri was very curious. He discussed the matter with Giovanni Poggi, the director of the Uffizi Gallery, and then sent an invitation to Peruggia to come to Florence, Italy. Later, Vincenzo Peruggia carefully brought the Mona Lisa to Florence and stayed at a hotel. On the 10th of December, 1913, he went to Alfredo Geri's office, told Geri that he was the one who had written the letter, and proposed to sell the Mona Lisa for $6,500. Alfredo Geri was very clever. He said he would pay the money, but first, he and Giovanni Poggi from the Uffizi needed to verify whether the painting was truly the Mona Lisa. They then agreed that the next day, Alfredo Geri and Giovanni Poggi would go to Peruggia's hotel room to inspect the painting. Once the arrangement was made, Vincenzo Peruggia was overjoyed. On one hand, he was happy that after 400 years, the Mona Lisa was finally returning to her birthplace. On the other hand, he was thrilled about receiving $6,500. He had no idea that this very action would lead him straight into a trap. As planned, on the 11th of December, 1913, Alfredo, Geri, and Giovanni Poggi went to Peruggia's hotel room. Upon arrival, Geri immediately asked to see the painting. Peruggia looked visibly nervous. He pulled a wooden box out from under the bed, placed it on the bed, and removed a cloth cover. Beneath the cloth was a hidden compartment from which he took out the painting. When Alfredo, Geri, and Giovanni Poggi saw the painting, they could hardly believe it was the real Mona Lisa. Seeing their expressions, Peruggia assumed they were convinced and held out his hand for the money. Alfredo Geri reassured him that the money would be delivered shortly. Then, Geri and Poggi left the hotel, taking the painting with them. Not long after they departed, there was a knock at Peruggia's door. He thought it was the suitcase of money arriving, but when he opened the door, the police were standing there, handcuffs in hand. It turned out that before going to meet him, Alfredo, Geri, and Giovanni Poggi had already alerted the police. The police immediately arrested Peruggia. He was later brought to trial in Italy. In court, he claimed he stole the painting out of patriotic pride, believing the Mona Lisa had been stolen from Italy during Napoleon's era. But he was mistaken, as Leonardo da Vinci had brought the painting to France himself in 1516. Furthermore, there is a theory that King Francis I of France purchased the painting directly from da Vinci in a legal transaction. Ultimately, Peruggia was convicted of theft and sentenced to 1 year and 15 days in prison. However, for bringing the Mona Lisa back to Italy, he was seen as a hero by many Italians. Under public pressure, he was released just 7 months later. After the Mona Lisa was recovered, the painting was exhibited in several major Italian cities for an extended period. By January 1914, the Mona Lisa was finally returned to the Louvre. Like a runaway child who had come back home, she was welcomed with even more love than the others in the house. Not only in France, people all over the world adored the Mona Lisa. After the theft, the Mona Lisa became the most famous painting in the world. When she was rehung in the Louvre Museum, in just the first 2 days, countless visitors from both within France and abroad came to admire her. According to French heritage law, the Mona Lisa is public property and cannot be sold. However, based on various data, her value can still be estimated. In 1962, when the Mona Lisa was brought to the US for exhibition, her insurance value was set at $100 million. Over time, her value has continued to rise, and today she is estimated to be worth around $970 million.